I think we can expect a few people to be coming on perhaps once we've gone live, so that's fine. Okay, welcome everyone to this meeting. Thank you all very much for agreeing to come along. I'm Councillor Jane McCoy. I'm Deputy Leader of the Council and Chair of the Housing, Economy and Business Committee. And the reason we have called this meeting is because the Council and myself are very disturbed about the ongoing outages at New Mill Quarter. We think that the disruption to residents is unacceptable, and we thought it was important for the residents affected by this to be able to hear directly from those people, those organisations involved in this, to hear about why these problems are occurring, and also to what's been done to make sure it doesn't happen again going forward. So we've got a number of people registered to speak today. 27 residents, I believe, have registered to ask questions. And we also have a number of people watching on a live stream. This is a Zoom meeting, and we've decided we did this because it was a request by residents. We use Zoom because it's more accessible than the Google Meet. What this does mean, though, unfortunately, is that the caption option that is available for people who with hearing difficulties on the Google Meet is not available. So the live stream will be, the meeting will be recorded. It is being live streamed. The live stream will be available after the meeting. And if you request it, we can provide a transcript for those with hearing difficulties. Okay. So just a bit of housekeeping before I make some introductions. As is customary for virtual meetings, can we ask that all participants keep their microphone off and their camera off unless I'm calling them to speak. This stops the live feed from cutting across other people because it happens if someone speaks when they're not called to. If you wish to ask a question, and there will be opportunities to ask questions, if you click on the bottom of your screen, it says participants, and click to raise your hand. And then I wait till be called upon, and then you can turn your camera on and your mic and ask your question. And don't forget to lower your hand afterwards, but our tech team might help with that in case it's a common problem. We have received a number of written questions in advance of the meeting, and we are keen to take as many questions as possible. So what we've tried to do is to summarise the key points raised in the questions, and they're on the agenda. And Alex, hopefully, can you pop up the agenda for me? So they will be summarised on the agenda. So these can be put to officers and partners who are here, and then we will have the opportunity for residents to ask any follow-up questions in relation to each of those items. For those questions we don't get through this evening, we will provide a written response. So if I can move on to introductions. So here this evening we have from SDEN. Mrs. Cherrington, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Amanda Cherrington and I'm the Managing Director of SDEN, and I welcome the opportunity tonight to apologise to our customers for the service that they've had over the last few months, and to express how unhappy I too am with the service they've received. It's not the service we envisaged that we would be delivering to our customers. I'm also very pleased that I am going to be joined this evening by the Managing Director, Stephen Thompson of Barratt's London. And I'm going to set out this evening, Chair, how the issues that have arisen, what we're going to do about it, and what we're going to do for going forwards with a shared commitment to resolve the issues on site. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, it's me on mute. I was saying thank you, Mr. Cherrington. I'm going to go to Catherine Carr to introduce herself.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. My name is Catherine Carr. I'm here in my capacity as a Director of Opportunities Sutton Limited, which has oversight of SDEN and reports into Sutton's Shareholdings Board.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to have in attendance Mr. Thompson from Barratt's. Mr. Thompson, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening. My name is Stephen Thompson. I'm the Managing Director of Barratt London, and thank you for inviting me onto this call.
Thank you. And from the council, we have Mr. Latham. Will you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. My name's Simon Latham. I'm the Strategic Director for Regeneration, Housing and Planning within the Council.
Thank you. And we also have Helen Bailey.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everybody. My name is Helen Bailey. I'm the Chief Executive of the Council, and I'm here on behalf of the Council to listen to what residents have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Also attending either by live stream or in the meeting, we have SDEN customers. We have the Sheldon Vesti, the chair of the New Mill Quarter Residents Group. We have the Wandle Valley Ward councillors, Councillor Andrew and Councillor Zuchowska. And we have Elliot Coburn, the constituency MP. So welcome to everyone. And also to those who've registered to ask their questions, who can introduce themselves when we call upon them. Can I just remind everyone, because there's a few latecomers, that it's protocol to turn off your camera and your microphone when you're not speaking. It affects the live feed if you don't do that. Thank you. So the first issue that is the most pressing issue is, of course, the issue of the outages. First question we'd like to put is to Mr. Thompson of Barratt's, which is, why are residents experiencing these outages and what is going to be done to address them? So, Mr. Thompson, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, firstly, I want to extend my apologies to all residents who have been impacted by these outages. And having reviewed our database, I agree the number of occurrences is unacceptably high. The reason for the outages are varied in nature. In most cases, the disruption has been contained to a few hours. However, there are some occurrences where delays have been more notable, and I can only apologise for the disruption that has been caused. Following my investigation, we have initiated a full review of the communal heating system by specialist contractors to check the as-built installation. Following that review, we will ensure any remediation that is required is addressed promptly. We have also put in place a proactive operation and maintenance agreement with the specific emphasis with the specialist contractor in the interim period until such time that the system can be adopted by SDEN. These measures, whilst not guaranteeing no further issues, should act to best mitigate any unplanned disruption in the future. Whilst SDEN's current service standards do not entitle compensation for these events experienced to date, I have agreed for a one-off payment of £54 to be deducted from the bills of those residents who have been most impacted by these outages. And I've based this figure, because it's quite specific, as you will see, I've based this figure on one of the leading energy suppliers out there in the marketplace, but I've actually bettered it. So the basis of the compensation will be being that where there have been 4 instances or more of an interruption lasting over 6 hours in any 12-month period, that Barratt will cover that cost, and as a goodwill gesture, we will pay that £54. SDEN will administer that on our behalf through the bills for those that are eligible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I hope that some residents are pleased to hear that. I'm sure there are some more questions. Councillor Zuchowska, I would like to sort of let the residents ask the questions first, if that's okay.
Chair, this is not a question. Councillor Andrews is not being let into the meeting. He just messaged me to say he's trying to get in, but I think someone needs to let him into the meeting. That's just a point of order, really. Sorry.
Thank you. Our technical
is able to advise how or the name of the participant that he's joining under, because I can't see him joining.
I'll let you work that out. Thank you. The other question that came from residents that perhaps I should put to Mr. Thompson first, and then we can take questions from the residents, was about the safety risk as a result of these outages. So, Mr. Thompson, can you give some reassurance on that, please?
Okay, so there have been 2 recent instances where the fire brigade have been called out by residents. These were as a result of a failure of the pump bellows in the substation in Chenal Court. The heating system is operated both at high temperature and high water pressure, and the failure resulted in water and steam escaping from the system. It is our understanding that this was mistakenly thought to be a fire due to the steam escaping from the air vents. However, I want to assure residents that the substation is enclosed and secure with access for trained and authorised operatives only. Whilst concerns have been raised about the risk of fire due to the water and steam escaping, the electrical system is designed with appropriate circuit breakers to prevent any such risk. Having investigated these failures, we have identified that there was an installation issue whereby the pump and the bellows were slightly out of alignment, causing undue wear and tear. As such, we have arranged for all pump bellows to be replaced and new ones installed, with the installation being independently verified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I've got 2 residents that want to ask questions in relation to your responses. So I've got Grace Platt. Would you like to put your question, please?
Yeah, hi. My question for Stephen is just, you said most impacted residents. What classes as a most impacted resident?
So just to be clear, so where a resident has been subject to an interruption that's lasted over 6 hours, 4 times during that 12-month period, we will provide that compensation. And look, just by way of comparison, you know, the leading energy supplier out there provides this similar basis for compensation on ESCO-led schemes. And what they do typically is they will compensate where there's been an interruption lasting over 12 hours on 4 occasions in a 12-month period. Now, I've reduced that threshold down to 6 hours, knowing that on this development there have been a number of outages that have lasted over 6 hours. So for those that have been mostly impacted by this will receive that compensation. But those, you know, there will be some residents that are fairly new on the development that won't be entitled to it.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, you're saying there's definitely been over 4 outages in the last 12 months that have been over 6 hours, just as a clarify.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Grace. And I have a question from Mr. Vesti.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Stephen Thompson. We've spoken before, so it's nice to put a face to the name. How can you be sure that the issues with the pumps wasn't overload based on demand? Why have Barratt staff said they were just in that room and unaware that the pump could shear? Will you address the concerns of the fire brigade regarding the electricity panel and how this was allowed to happen twice? And can you see that £54 is not fair compensation for the stress and worry, and it's also against the advertised statements of 100% resilience? Thank you.
So, Mr. Vesti, I'll do my best to respond to that. So, in relation to the pumps, having investigated that issue, our specialists have advised us on the reasons as to why those pumps have failed. So, we're quite clear that it was the slight misalignment of the pumps and the bellows that caused undue stress on that and caused that failure. And that was the case in both instances. The fact that we've now replaced those bellows and the fact that we've now ensured the proper alignment of the pump and the bellows, I don't expect for that to be a problem going forward. In fact, I would be quite assured by what has happened that it should not be an issue at all. So, I don't expect that to be a further reoccurrence. In relation to the compensation, I've been quite clear, in terms of benchmarking that against, one of the leading energy suppliers within this country. And I suppose I've used it as the basis that if it's good enough for one of the leading energy suppliers, then it has to be a fair representation for me to put forward today to you. And that's the basis of why I've done it. I hope that's addressed the points that you've raised.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I can. I would imagine that. Just 1 second, please, Mr. Vesti. I would just like to flag up that I'm glad you're confident in the service going forward and the performance of the system. Obviously, that will be tested by the by the residents, because they will be seeing that for themselves. And I think. Safe to say that there will be a lot of anger if that isn't the case. So I'm glad you're very confident about it. That's exactly what we want it to continue to operate without any more outages. Absolutely, but that if having given those reassurances, there's going to be some concerns. Mr. Vesti, you want to come?
Yes, sorry, just to readdress my point. So my questions actually encompass some points that weren't addressed there, Mr. Thompson. So that was the risk to staff. I actually spoke to your staff on site, and they told me that they were in there just before it happened. And
Vesti, I can't hear you. Might be my connection.
How about now? Is that working? Yeah,
I can get you now. Yes.
Fantastic. So I actually spoke to Barratt staff and contractors, and they were actually in that room about 15 minutes beforehand. And you said that staff are appropriately trained, but were your contractors? There is a resident who lives above that room who is very concerned, and I've spoken to twice, and I'm not sure this is going to put people at ease. And finally, if this information was available, and Catherine Carr, who's also here, stated that she had a report from the fire brigade that stated no risk, why wasn't this provided to residents? And why did a month lapse before it was actually announced and told to residents that this event had even occurred? Interestingly, 2 hours before I raised it at the local committee. Thank you.
So, Mr. Vesti, I can't answer all the points that you raised, but I think, if you can provide me with the details of the resident who has the concerns, I'm more than happy to arrange for that resident to be contacted to address those concerns specifically. In relation to the communications that you referred to, I'm afraid your question, I'm not able to answer that. All I'm aware of is of the issue that occurred and how the issue was dealt with on the day.
Thank you once again, but I do feel that's lackluster.
Thank you very much for those residents. Remember to put their Elliot Colburn, you've got your hand up to ask a question?
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, your connection froze there, so I didn't hear you call me. Stephen, could I take you back to something that you said in your opening remarks? You said that you cannot guarantee that there will be any further issues. Now, residents were given the expectation that there would be 100% guarantee that there wouldn't be any issues. At the Sutton Shareholders Board in October, we were told that SDEN's problems were behind them. And in one-to-one meetings I've had with Mr. Cherrington, and also in email replies I've had whenever I raise these outages, I've been told on various occasions the problems are now behind us, and that's only then been disproven by another incident. Is the position now that the 100% guarantee is no longer in place, and there is now this new position that we cannot guarantee any further issues? And consequently, as a result of that, if that is the case, is the council then happy to accept that what seems to be a change of that guarantee? Is the council now willing to accept that there will be future issues rather than going with this 100% efficiency that residents were given?
Thank you, Elliot. And that's a good point, because yes, when we had the initial outages, we were concerned and were told that it would be sorted with the permanent energy centre. Perhaps I should go to Amanda Cherrington, who can talk a little bit more about that particular issue. I'm hoping that, well, I'll let Mrs. Cherrington explain.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Elliot Coburn MP. Thank you for the question. I think we can't actually guarantee there will be no more outages, is the honest answer. What I can guarantee is that myself and Stephen, as previously mentioned, are working hard to ensure that we can resolve all the issues that caused the outages. We are doing a review of all the installation. There is testing going on currently, and we will continue to monitor the situation as it progresses. I do have to say, though, it is a construction site, and it will go on for a little longer until the whole estate is built out. So there is always an option that in the event that construction workers make various installations, that the on-site system may go down temporarily. However, we are carefully monitoring the situation, and I can give that assurance, and that we are working hard to ensure it doesn't occur again.
Thank you, Mrs. Cherrington. So I've got another, I think that's another raised hand from Grace Platt, and then I'll take this question, and then I think we need to move on to some of the other questions that want answering that we've been submitted. So Grace Platt, please.
Hi, yeah, Mrs. Cherrington, sorry, just a point here. You've just said that this could continue on until this place is no longer a building site. So are you confirming that we're not going to be connected to the incinerator until all of the homes have been built here? Is that what you're saying?
No, Grace, I'm not saying that. If I may, Chair, may I respond to Grace? Thank you. No, I'm not saying that, Grace. What I'm saying is I can't guarantee that there may not be further outages or disruption. It may not be outages, it may be disruption in temperature, etc., because it is a construction site. The connection to the energy recovery facility and the landfill gas engines on the Verdure site, because that's where we're going to get the off-site energy from once SDEN is connected, is not related to these incidents on site. We are working hard to get the site connected, and I can update you now that that connection will be taking place within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We've done all the testing, and that is very near. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cherrington. Just one quick thing. At the moment, what would you say to people who are trying to sell their sometimes £600,000 houses, who can't now tell the buyers that they would have guaranteed heating or hot water supply during the next few cold months? Do you accept liability for this?
Perhaps that question, I should put that question to Mr. Thompson, because it is about the construction works, I think, in respect. But Mrs. Cherrington, if you want to come back on that. Mr. Thompson, could you respond?
Yeah, so look, to respond to that particular question, look, no system can be 100% guaranteed to be operational. As Amanda says, whilst we are building this construction site out, there will undoubtedly be areas where, we cannot be absolutely sure. There will be incidents that will occur. That's just happened in life. And I must kind of reiterate as well that, if you look at other development sites that have the benefit of decentralized energy that are run by ESCOs, some of the big ESCOs out there, they put in place their terms, their guaranteed standards, that effectively say that, look, if the system goes down, this is what we will do in order to get the system back operational again. So it's kind of recognised that even on a completed development, where you've got a fully operational energy centre and fully operational communal heating system that's serving that development, but from time to time, there will be unplanned events that will occur. So, one has to be realistic about these points.
Can you then maybe admit that you shouldn't have sold us properties on 100% resilience? Because that was in the marketing that we got given when we bought here.
Yeah, look, I don't know. Look, I do not have that data in front of me. But, in terms of that 100% resilience, that may be misinferred in relation to what that was trying to actually communicate. And
how did you infer 100% resilience, Mr. Thompson?
Sorry, I expect that resilience point is really in relation to, for example, the energy centre having resilience on the basis that if one boiler goes down, there's alternative boilers in place there to kick in the event that one should fail. That's probably what is meant by that resilience, not that there's a guaranteed supply, because no one can guarantee that supply. It's just not possible.
So are you admitting that that could be seen as misrepresentation on your marketing materials? Because how would you expect us to know that's what that meant without your staff explaining that explicitly to us, that 100% resilience does not mean 100% resilience? I won't ask any further questions.
Okay. So to address that, look, I do not know, because I do not have that data in front of me. But so I can't really answer that question, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grace. And I think, yes, the issue about future reliability, we can understand that residents will be rather sceptical, and yes, because they were told that the outages were sorted and that they wouldn't continue, and then they've had far too many. So we can understand that that scepticism. I think the proof will be in the pudding. The proof is seeing this go forward and no more outages, and that's what we are all striving to achieve. So we've sort of moved on nicely to this question. So I will take some more questions now. I've got, one's just disappeared. I've got Ollie, who's raised his hand, would like to ask a question.
Oh, yeah, it's back on the 24/7 supply. So it's very clear on the SDEN website, 24/7 supply, 100% resilience. What Amanda Cherrington and Stephen Thompson have both turned around and said now is, actually, you know what, that's not happening. And realistically, it never was going to happen. And you're giving some people 54 quid. How is that fair?
Thank you, and I would be interested to know whether other energy supply companies also give 100% resilience guarantees, because as been demonstrated, as Mr. Thompson has said, it is never 100% guaranteed. I'm sure we've all had gas mains outages and things like that. So yes, perhaps officers would like to respond in respect to that. If it was put on the website, then that would seem to be an anomaly or incorrect. Who will respond? Mrs. Cherrington?
Chair, I can only echo what Mr. Thompson, Stephen Thompson said. It was always with an understanding that this was a standard supply and that there's always a potential that the system will go down. However, I would like to state that once we are connected to the energy source on the Viridor site, the current system that our residents have will become the backup system. So the tertiary system will be changed, and that will bring a greater degree of resilience. It doesn't guarantee that there will not be outages. As Stephen has said, we can't guarantee that. There are all sorts of problems that may occur. However, it would definitely reduce the possibility, given that we had 2 supplies of energy to the site.
Thank you. Can I suggest that the website is amended for that particular point, because we obviously we don't want to give the wrong impression to people. So I'm taking people that haven't asked questions before just to make sure that we do get a broad coverage. So I've got a Rob who's raised his hand.
Yes, hello. I'm sorry, you can't remove the piece on the website which says 24 hours, 7 days a week. That's what you've all sold us. You can't suddenly change what we've all signed up to. Surely that's a breach of contract and misrepresentation. So you can't remove that from the website. We've got 400 home people who have signed up to that. So I don't believe you can do that. We've got contracts in place. And as everyone else has said, you can't amend something after the event, not without our permission.
Okay, thank you. That's a relevant point. And we'll obviously have to take that away. And as I say, it'd be interesting to see what other energy supply companies do. Mr. Vesti, you have a hand raised?
Yes, I think that we're avoiding the point here, and we're doing that not very well. Given what you're telling me, given the statements here, are you saying that you purposefully misrepresented your sales documents, council documents, and your website to induce customers to purchase? And now that you've been caught out in that, you're reneging on it. Honestly, that sounds like what it is. And it's not Barratt. It is SDEN. It is the council. It is on SDEN's website, and it is in council documents, as is the price parity claims. And there's no avoiding that. So are you saying you have misrepresented 400 customers at an average price of 400,000? That's £200 million to purchase this flawed system on false pretenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vesti. I don't think there was ever any intention to mislead anybody. This is all done with the best of intentions, and we are very disappointed at the outages that weren't predicted, weren't seen, and weren't expected. But I do understand the anger and confusion, and we can see what, I mean, there's been compensation being offered, which is actually, and I think there is a compensation scheme on the SDEN website in case of outages and breaks in supply. So there seems to be some contradiction there. So again, I think this probably needs to be looked into in more detail, and the situation Jane, sorted out. Now then, I've got another question. I've got from from Councillor Andrew.
Thanks, Councillor McCoy. So I second all the points that have been raised about the 24/7 supply, because I just think you cannot possibly expect people to take 100% of viewings and 24/7 supply and then think that means, oh, of course there'll be outages. That's just not what anyone would think. And I think that, but even to take what Mr. Thompson said at face value and sort of go, oh, well, everyone will know they didn't mean that. Of course there'll be outages. I strongly reject that as well. I mean, I live in a property that has a normal boiler. I haven't had an outage in the last year. That's not the sort of thing that I'm used to. And they've had about 13. So the idea that this is somehow just normal or to be expected is for the birds. So I think when you think that this is not normal, not expected, and also the fact that it's happened like again and again and again, the £54 isn't sufficient. And what really needs to happen is that every time there is an outage, there needs to be compensation, because that is, in my view, going against what residents were promised. So why, Stephen or Mandy or Jane, why wouldn't we think that it's acceptable to just give residents compensation each time there's an outage? Because there shouldn't be outages.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. And yes, the residents have certainly had more outages than we deem acceptable. In fact, as you say, no outage is really acceptable. I'm trying to find a way to get a response to address this issue. I mean, the key thing to do is to stop these outages. We've been seeking compensation to respond. Obviously, you'd rather not have the outages than compensation, but I don't know if anyone else is able to come in to explain or give some more information. Mrs. Charrington?
The only thing I would say, Chair, is each resident has signed a residential supply agreement when they moved into their property. I would ask them to have another look at the service standards there. There is a whole section on what to do when there are outages and the compensation. So we always knew, and indeed the document you signed, the actual agreement with SDEN, does state that that is a situation that had to be addressed. Clearly, the situation we have now is totally unacceptable. I'm not in any way justifying the position we find ourselves in. As we've stated several times this evening, it is wholly unacceptable, the numbers of outages that our customers have had over the last few months, and we're working very hard to ensure they are not a pattern of outages, but we've uncovered all the issues. And as I say, we are working together with Barratt's to do that.
Thank you. We are in this position and we can just try and make things right going forward. And the best way to do that is to not have any more outages. Thank you. I've got other questions that were raised. This is about SDEN customer services. There's concerns that the SDEN customer service is not very responsive and there's not an out of hours service. I think this is for you, Mrs. Charrington, to explain what SDEN is offering in terms of customer service and about the out of hours service, please.
Thank you, Chair. So SDEN does have a customer service helpline and a telephone number and an email address. That is operated currently from 9 till 5 daily, and we have customer service assistants there ready to help you, and they can access your accounts and resolve as many problems as possible. We also do have an out of hours number for you to call. That's also on our website, and we repeat it through much of our communications with you. And that is run by our operations and maintenance contractor, Veolia. And that is run 24/7 as a maintenance line. I would like to assure customers, I have tried it several times myself, and it does work. So if indeed you had an outage in the evening or at a weekend, that would be the number that you'd phone. So I think that's quite a clear line for our customer services. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions from customers.
Thank you. So to confirm, there is a telephone number for SDEN that can be used during office hours, 9 to 5. What I've had fed back is that when people have tried to contact the out of hours service, particularly regarding outages, they've basically been told it's nothing to do with them. Are you aware of this, and can you explain what's happened there?
Thank you, Chair. So I think I'd have to speak to the individual customers if they could come through to us again, explain the occasion that this happened so we could pursue it. But there is a helpline there. As I say, I have tried to access it myself numerous times, especially during the outages, to check the service was actually working properly for our customers. And I got straight through on the emergency line. I got straight through to an operator. I also got the overall message that there was an outage on site. Then I got through to the helpline that told me that engineers were working and the nature of the problem. So I'm not quite sure what the problem is that customers are experiencing, but I would really like to hear it directly from our customers. So if they want to come through to us on our customer helpline and tell us the incident, the time, the day, the event, so we can unpick what happened. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Mr. Vesti's hand is an old one. I know that Grace has raised her hand, so I certainly want to hear from any residents if they have had this problem with the out-of-hours services. So, Mr. Vesti's coming on, so that must be a new hand. Mr. Vesti.
Yes. So I will just say that we've had several customers who've brought that forwards, and Amanda Charrington's actually aware of that. I've actually emailed her personally myself to highlight this. When we do manage to get through to Veolia, they've actually passed me on to London Borough of Sutton, explicitly stating that they no longer hold the contract. On other occasions, they simply say they don't know where New Mill Quarter is. this is the out of hours number that's been provided. What can you say to that?
Thank you, Sheldon. I would say that's wholly unacceptable for you as a customer. I will investigate that personally. Sheldon, I don't know why you were told that, because, as I say, when I phoned, that was not my experience. Obviously, they don't know who's on the end of the line. They knew New Milk Water when I told them that that was what I was inquiring about. They also knew the nature of the problem, and I wasn't referred to the London Borough of Sutton. They have no instruction to do so. So I am genuinely baffled by that response. But I will take it straight to the contractor. Again, Mr. Vesti, Sheldon Vesti, if you would send me the actual occasion, the time, so we can trace that back with Veolia as to the issue at source. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Just to jump on that, because residents are submitting questions to me in real time. I have a customer here, and she has said, during the last major outage, there was an email sent out stating that vulnerable residents were provided electric heaters. She emailed in directly, also to you, saying that she had health conditions and was completely ignored. She has a heart condition. Why didn't you answer?
Thank you, Sheldon, again, and I apologise profusely to the resident that has raised this with you. In the last outage, we did get heaters to our vulnerable customers. I would emphasise that we do hold a register of vulnerable customers. Obviously, you have to nominate yourself. We do raise that in our communications with you regularly. If you are vulnerable, please register on the vulnerable persons register. Then we know, in the event there's an outage, who to prioritise with extreme need. And that's who we did prioritise on that occasion. I am actually only aware of 2 other customers that came in. I'm thinking of the Friday night when there was quite a long outage and it was quite cold that night. Sheldon, that's the one I'm thinking of. I did actually have additional customers came through that night who were not on the register, and we instructed Veolia to take the heaters to those residents. They phoned them and they left them outside the properties. I will investigate what happened with the customer that is talking to you, if they'd like to come through to me again and see what happened. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll do that, Amanda. Thank you very much. I just want a final question and then I will hand over. I know of one customer who's referred you to the ICO for GDPR breaches. That was back in October. You still haven't answered them. And in fact, Jane McCoy is also CC'd into that. Now, I appreciate you're sitting here saying you will look into these things, but the honest interpretation by customers is that you just ignore them, as does Jane, as does the council. How will you be able to actually supply information or help customers in this manner if you're not actually reading and responding to your emails?
Mr. Vesti, Sheldon, I am only aware, the only referral that's gone to the ICO that I am aware of is the referral with regard to the review of the financial model for SDEN. Is that the incident you have in mind?
No, I have one where your vulnerable customers form to be filled out wasn't GDPR compliant, and that was raised with both yourself and Jane McCoy and complaints, and I've personally had sight of the emails stretching back to October. I saw that Jane responded about 1 month ago now, but didn't touch on this conversation, and that's still ongoing. I'm going to say that I find it very troubling that you don't seem to be aware of this.
I am aware, Ms. Sheldon, I am aware of the GDPR issue, and there is no breach, but I will pick that up separately with you if you want a further discussion on that matter.
That would be fantastic. I've been waiting on further discussions for a year. Thank you.
I think, I mean, it's saying that these emails have gone out and no response is between the residents. I think I'm happy to be forwarded any emails if they're not getting responded to, or to be copied in, but I wasn't aware of these. So yeah, so it's just important that individual residents take up their issues directly, first with SDEN, and then they can either go to their ward councillors or come to me and see what we can do to respond to that. Yes, so we're sorry if there hasn't been any responses. It's important that we make sure the things are getting through. Grace, you've had your hand up for quite some time. Is that a new hand?
Yeah, yeah, that's the new hand. I've just got a quick thing there. Amanda keeps mentioning, or sorry, Mrs. Charrington keeps mentioning that customers have to go to her directly. I believe we've had this conversation before, but we do have a residents association here, of which we've got 4 members, and I think residents committee, of what we've got 4 members of the committee, and people come to the committee. Sometimes they find it easier to come through us. Can we get some assurances, if we do bring issues up as the committee, that you will actually talk to us this time? Because previously we were told that we couldn't be talked to about these issues because it had to be the customer. But now you're saying you can talk to Sheldon about a GDPR breach. Where's the line? Will you recognise that Sheldon is our head of our RA, and will you recognise him as a body that you can talk to in regards to these issues?
Thank you, Grace. Of course, I do recognise Sheldon as the chair of the Residents Association on New Mill Quarter. However, some of the issues raised are individual customer issues. Because of GDPR and confidentiality, I am under constraints. I can't respond on individual complaints through another party. I have to respond, the company has to respond directly to the individual with the complaint. So that's why I've said previously that I can't respond to complaints that come through the Residents Association. So I would always encourage customers in the first instance to come to us directly. That would be the first port of call, because there are a range of issues that come to play when a customer has a problem. And obviously we need to look at their records, we need to look at what's going on and talk to them directly. So I would encourage customers to come directly, and indeed all my communication to you has been saying that. I would urge customers to come forward so we can better solve the problems that are raised. So it's not a question of me not recognising his position at all. It's just my contractual relationship is with individual customers. SDEN's relationship is with its customers. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that. Just a quick follow-up then. If those individual customers, I think you don't understand how stressed and how anxious this situation has made a lot of the residents here. This has been ongoing. We bought expensive houses, which we're worried about heating. And I know you said a minute ago that everyone who was a vulnerable customer and asked, everyone who was a vulnerable customer and asked for a heater got them. But I've got messages here saying I asked and I didn't, and I've made a complaint and I've not heard back. Obviously, I'll send them your way. Is there a way to have an intermediary, for example, if, for example, customer A want the RA to speak on their behalf, if they email you saying that and they give their permission to speak on behalf of the RA, is that an acceptable midpoint?
Absolutely, Grace, absolutely. If a customer nominates and gives signed authority to someone else to act on their behalf, we actually do have customers in that position, then of course we will accept that as authority to deal with them. And I'm not in any way minimising the stress this has caused you as customers. I am aware that the repeated outages have put stress on everyone on the site, and I am aware that it's compounded by the COVID conditions we find ourselves in currently. It makes everything seem a lot worse because we are confined to our home. So I don't want you to feel that there's a cavalier or a gung-ho attitude towards what's gone on site. I'm very concerned about the situation that we have, and I am very committed to resolving it.
Perfect, thank you. Just one quick point. Just a quick question that kind of popped into my head. We have to call you to let you know there have been outages. Is there no way that you would know that there have been outages before you've been told by residents? Does that question make sense? Because
yes, yeah, absolutely makes sense. I'll tell you how it works. It works in two ways. Sometimes customers are faster than the on-site system. Sometimes I've had calls from the engineers on site, and sometimes it's multiple routes. So it is different. It just depends where it's spotted first, because there are alert systems in the installation on site that does flag there's an issue, and it's just how fast that filters through to everyone, and me in particular.
Very quickly then, last question, because this is something that I know we've been worrying about. If there is an outage, do we get charged how does the charging work? Does our house know that the water coming into our house is not hot? Basically, should we turn our heating off if there is an outage in the future, or does it not matter?
I will get a correct answer for you, Grace. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I've got a fair idea, but I want the right answer, so I will respond after this meeting with the answer to that
Can I
question.
confirm then, if the answer is that we should have turned our heating off, and we didn't know that for the last year, that the amount, or 2 years, the amount we have paid extra can be looked into some compensation for that? Because if I've left my heating on because I've been out, or, you know, not realised that the heating was gone, say it was overnight, then I surely will have been charged possibly for hot water that I didn't receive. If that's the case, can we look into some form of compensation for that, please?
We can certainly investigate that situation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm quite concerned about the issues that's been raised about customers not feeling able to raise their concerns directly with SDEN, and also actually needing to go via a residents association. That and it does make things difficult because of GDPR and because of the customer relationship. So I think we need to make sure that SDEN's customer service is more accessible, more responsive, and so that people feel confident that when they do contact SDEN with issues, that they do get the response that they would expect and that they need. So I think that if we can
Councillor McCoy, I think you're mute. We lost you.
have I frozen? Have you lost me? Can you hear me?
You're back now. You're back now.
Right. Okay. So I'll better repeat myself because I'm not sure where I went. What I'm saying is that it's very worrying that customers don't feel confident that they can deal with SDEN customer services. They don't feel confident, and they feel the need to go through a third party, and also with the complications of the GDPR issues. So obviously we need to make sure that SDEN's customer service is more responsive, is more accessible, so that residents can get the confidence that they can have their issues dealt with in an efficient way that way. And then hopefully the Residents Association can deal with just the more general broader issues that are relevant to the estate, and that would be the ideal situation. So we'll take that away. I'm particularly concerned about this issue about Veolia not taking the calls and passing it on to London Borough Sutton. So I do hope that will be investigated. I don't know if those telephone calls are recorded, because that does sound well, in an out of hours service you expect it to be that's when it's an emergency, so I expect that to be working efficiently and to not have that kind of response. So we will say that is a significant issue that I do want to see investigated. So thank you. I've got Russell Blaine. I don't think you've spoken yet, so your hand's raised for a question.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I must say your broadband seems about as reliable as our heating and hot water is at New Mill Quarter, which is a shame. I'd just like to raise a point, a question that Grace asked around whether the meters still tick over when you don't have hot water coming into the property. And I can confirm that, and I'm surprised Mrs. Cherrington doesn't know the answer to that, but the meters do tick over. We had an outage just after Christmas where we hadn't used our heating for 2 weeks, and the HRU just packs up, and that's an extremely common problem that obviously needs to be looked at. But I'd actually like to ask a question around the pricing and the fact that we're not connected to the main system, as to why we're paying such extortionate prices for such an unreliable system. Surely if we're going to be connected to the main system until that point, we should be paying a lot less in terms of cost.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine, and you've led us nicely onto the next question that was on the agenda. So thank you. Mrs. Cherrington, is this one for you to respond to, or is it Catherine?
Chair, I can respond to the pricing policy. So we do know that SDEN is a decentralized energy network, and it takes its heat from a central source, as indeed all decentralized energy networks do, and there are a range of different sources. So it's not comparable to the standard national utility providers. I think that is quite sometimes a challenge to get our head around how that actually works. So when we actually consider the pricing mechanism for decentralized energy networks, then you have to take into consideration all the factors that add a cost to your heat, hot water. So in the case of SDEN, SDEN's pricing not only includes your actual usage, but it also includes the cost of maintenance, the cost of repair, the cost of replacement. So in effect, you will never get those costs. If your system fails, SDEN, as part of your contract with us, will be out fixing it. If it needed replacing, if your HIU needed replacing, the same applies. So because of that, our prices are not the same as your standard utility providers, which literally do just provide your energy source. So it is quite a difficult comparison. And on the face of it, it always seems that a decentralized energy network is more expensive. However, SDEN is competitive in terms of its price, and we do have price parity with an alternative supplier through the mechanism I've described. We do benchmark quite extensively, so there is a heat trust that there is no, there is a benchmark, forgive me, there is a benchmark there that you can actually look at to check our pricing, to see how we compare. We also do benchmarking, so we've looked at other decentralized energy networks to see how we compare. And if I may, I'd like to bring in Stephen Thompson again from Barrett's, because he's also done a piece of work independent of the work that SDEN has done, and he has some points to make on that, if I may, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Thompson, yes, I understand that you've worked with other decentralised energy network systems.
Yeah, so look, you know, decentralised energy is quite common, and certainly has been common over the last 10 years. So, you know, in terms of my experience of that, we have a number of development sites that we have built historically and that we are currently building, where we have got other operators. And, you know, I must say that the pricing on the New Mill Quarter site, certainly in terms of the tariff charge, is extremely competitive, to the extent that it's the most competitive out of all of the developments that I've got the experience of working on. The standing charge is at the higher end of the spectrum, but it's not out of kilter. So my experience is, and you'll see a lot of fluctuation between what energy providers will provide. Some will provide a lower standing charge but a higher tariff. Some will provide a lower tariff but a higher standing charge. In the round, in real terms, it probably balances off. But I think the point here is that the benefit that New Mill Quarter residents have got with their low tariff charge is that the more heat they use, it's extremely competitive. And I kind of, I suppose, you know, to address some of the concerns that have been raised in the past in relation to the fact that people are at home more and therefore their heating costs will be more, the lower tariff charge will very much support and benefit the additional heat usage. So in the round, you know, my experience is that I think this is fairly priced at this current juncture in comparison to our experience elsewhere. I hope that helps.
Okay, can I just bring you back to actually answer the question though, around we're not connected to the full system and we're paying what we perceive as not competitive versus market rates. So until we're connected to that system, surely it should be discounted.
I think, Mr. Blaine, I mean, look, I think Amanda will be best to answer that. But I think in reality, actually, the costs probably would be higher in the interim period, or should be higher in the interim period versus the permanent situation. But I will leave that to Amanda. She'll be better placed to answer that.
Thank you. Mrs. Cherrington, are you able to explain more?
Just that, Chair and Mr. Blaine, forgive me, I didn't catch your first name. Just to restate, yes, I mean the prices will not change as we move from one heat source to the next, and they are calculated on a range of costs, as in any system that would be calculated. Forgive me, I'm not following the rationale there that one system would be different to another. I'm not following that rationale at all.
I'm more along the lines of how unreliable it's been, and the fact that there are outages because we're not connected to the so-called full system. We're on a temporary source that, quite frankly, has got worse and worse as the site has filled. As capacity and demand has drawn on that system, it's become more unreliable, which would suggest to man in the street, myself, who isn't very knowledgeable on this, that actually it's not able to provide enough for the growing site.
Thank you, Russell. I do now get you thinking there. So you're absolutely right, and I understand how you've concluded this because you've had so many outages over the last few months, and it has increased over the last few months, and I readily acknowledge that, and that's very much why we've had this meeting this evening. However, what we have said to you is we're working with Barratt's to resolve these issues, which were installation faults. They have been identified, the remedial measures have been taken, and we are now carefully monitoring the installment on site to monitor how well it's performing. I can assure you that what is installed on site is fit for purpose, as in it can cope with the capacity of a full build out of the Barratt's development. That design has already been worked through. I also would say when the heat on, as we call it, from the Viridor site starts, it will be a new heat source, and you will then have the backup that you currently are using as your primary heat source. So you will have more resilience. I think that's the most I can offer, Russell, at the moment in terms of answering your question.
Thank you. And again, obviously it'll be demonstrated hopefully when it is connected up to the landfill gas engines, and that will be the reliability will, everybody will see whether that is the case or not. Yes, that's we will be watching that closely. I've got Rob, who has his hand up and hasn't asked a question before.
Hello again. Question regarding the tariffs. So at the moment, it is £4.76 per kilowatt. Now, I believe it was the MD of Barratt, Stephen Thompson, who said it's competitive. However, the average price of gas, a very quick Google search just now, is, where are we, about £3.80. There's nearly £1 difference, yet it's competitive. Can someone enlighten me, please?
Who would like to respond to that? Mrs. Charrington?
Chair, again, I will respond to that outside of this meeting. I would need to know where, forgive me, was it Rob? Yes,
it's comparing I think it's the variable rate with the gas rates.
Yeah, so it's the wholesale price of gas. We do buy a huge range of data to calculate the two metrics that we use, which is the wholesale price of gas for the unit charge, and we use market intelligence to provide the RPI or CPI for your standing charge. I am happy to share that with our residents, the data that we buy in and how we calculate that process, other than just picking off, random points. I think it's a whole process that has to be carefully calculated. It isn't a random figure. It is carefully substantiated.
I'm sure it is. I think the issue we have is that we have nowhere else to go for our hot water provision. So anyone that has gas or electric has got numerous suppliers to go to, whereas we can only go to SDEN. And when you say it is in market tariffs and market range and whatnot, and like I say, a very quick Google search that I did shows £1 difference. I'm interested to see what data you've got that enables you to charge that sort of rate per kilowatt, because we have nowhere else to go. We are stuck with your rates. If we want it, we can't go anywhere else. So really, this pricing really needs to be watertight. So yes, I think we'd very much like to see the data on how it's all calculated, as well as the standing charge and how that calculation works. Because typically, when you have a gas boiler, It's serviced annually, 120 quid, something like that. It's normally much cheaper. We're paying approximately, well, I'm paying approximately £360 a year as a standing charge. It's roughly about £1 a day, I believe. So again, I really would like to see how that data is calculated. And I think a lot of other people would also. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think you've flagged up quite an issue. Everybody sees their bills and they do look very high compared to your standard gas bill that you would expect somewhere else. And as you say, you are locked into this as part of the joining this particular development. And I think we need to try and find a way of getting that explained more carefully, that it's not, and more clearly, that it's not quite comparing like with like when you compare with the gas bills you had before, but it's important that that information is out there. I will direct you to the National Heat Trust, which is a website that and an organisation that is set up to try and help to do this comparison. And I think that the SDEN website does direct you there as well. It's a way of that it explains the difference between the way decentralised energy networks are charged and how to actually look at your bill and compare it on a like-for-like basis with a traditional conventional system, so that you can see whether you are it is a fair price. The pricing policy, which was set by the council for the company, was that it should be comparable to and cost no more than a conventional gas system, on the basis that because you are locked in, that is really important, and that has to be, there is annual reviews to do that. But yes, we are aware that that trying to explain it to people, we've not been doing a very good job. I mean, it was quite helpful to hear from Stephen Thompson that he's done some work to compare, and he thinks with other networks, and he thinks it is fair, but until residents are convinced, they are still going to be unhappy, and especially with all the additional outages that just make it feel a very unpleasant situation, and you know, it feels unjustified and inequitable. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on that, and actually I would be grateful to Stephen Thompson if he could you know, share with us ways that other network energy company suppliers with decentralized energy networks have talked to their customers about these pricing arrangements and explained that to them. That would be useful. Thank you. So I've got Ollie has got his hand raised. I am taking people. Well, yeah, Ollie. Thank you.
Councillor McCoy, you mentioned that SDEN's pricing policy as approved by the council and shareholdings board is one of pricing parity of that of a conventional gas system and a boiler being. And I hate again to raise this, it's been raised time and time again, but that is not being achieved by SDEN. It's clear it's not just an opinion of one or two people, it's in the pricing level itself, and it's in the assumptions. You can look at Department for Energy and Climate Change, Competition Markets Authority, Advertising Standards Agency, industry experts, boiler manufacturers, a feasibility study performed on behalf of Merton Borough Council, one of the customers SDEN is actually looking to take up, industry maintenance guidelines, and Viridor's own financial modelling. Those aren't just a few things plucked out of the air. They are solid evidence to say SDEN is not achieving its policy. Whenever this has been put to SDEN, their only defence has been to reference an online tool, the Heat Trust Calculator, which is actually against its terms of use. In fact, one of their assumptions, which underpins the inflated costs we're charging, relates to a 2008 briefing note, which the authors themselves have a low level of confidence in. By refusing to budge, SDEN is not only failing on its policy promises to the council, but also the promises on its sales and marketing literature to customers and developers. When will the concerns of residents, councillors, and the MP be listened to and this pricing disparity addressed?
Thank you, Ollie. You referred to DEC, which is now the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Standards. They have some oversight of the SDEN and involvement, and you referenced some other external reports and organisations. But you know, you can look at these things from anywhere. We're following government guidance by using the Heat Trust network, as far as I understand. This is the information that was provided to us as the shareholdings board when the pricing policy was set. We were following industry good practice and the government guidance to reference the Heat Trust network as an independent source, with external advice. I understand that you're saying you've got information from some places and we've got information from, and we're saying we've got information from some places. I think you're right that there might be, if we can find a way of getting an independent source to verify the situation. All I can say is that the policy was trying to be set. The aim was to be set, so it is fair. If it needs independent verification, perhaps we can try and find ways of doing that. But we have been following government guidance and best practice, we've yet to sort of obviously make that case to residents and explain that. So perhaps we need to try and find some better ways of doing that. We have been following industry. Oh, that was the other thing. And the industry standards that you set, they are provided and set by the Heat Trust network. They are gathered and they are used by, as industry standards. So it's not standards, not assumptions that the council or SDEN has made. It is industry standards that we have been told to look at. That's my understanding, and that was what was put to the shareholdings board, which was agreed, and policy was agreed cross-party. But I understand that there's a feeling that there is a need to be independently verified, and I don't know. Perhaps Helen Bailey at the end can talk about a way we might try and work on that. Thank you. I've got Grace Platt and Archie Sheldon. Mr. Vesty, you've had your hand for a while. Let me come to you.
I have. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to start off with saying that everything you've said here ignores your own advertised statements. You advertised as parity, you don't have it. You've referenced DBEI, but they've had no oversight of your pricing model, nor did KPMG. They went through financials and the fiscal sustainability of the business, but not in your actual advertised terms. You're not aligned to the Heat Trust. Your models themselves show a boiler lifespan of 11.2 years, which is against the CIB SE guidance. You've bundled fixed costs into variable charges. You can go and have a simple look. Octopus now, today, you can purchase gas at 2.8 pence. Your own models, which you actually sat on the committee of, Jane, show 3.2 pence as parity, yet you went live at 6.1 pence. And this is when wholesale gas was several times higher. And I want to remind you that the ASA ruled against E.ON on their district heating advertising for the claims of price parity. And not only all of the information I've just told you, but we've provided this to you. We've provided documents. We've evidence-based it. And to date, the council and SDEN has not been able to refute it. There's been no back on that. And I'm going to draw you back to what I said earlier, just simply about misrepresentation. I have the gut feeling that when you advertised this, you didn't know what you were doing. It seems that no one has checked it. There's no dotting of I's and crossing of T's. You've lied purposefully, I'm going to call it what it is, on sales documents about 100% reliability and parity to the market, neither of which have been achieved.
Thank you, Mr. Vesty. And these are issues that you have raised repeatedly, and you have received responses to. I think the issue is that you do not accept the responses, do not believe them. We've said there's been a lot of independent experts and involved in this, a lot of consultants. Perhaps I can ask Catherine to talk about the expertise that has been involved in this situation, or Mrs. Charrington, whoever is appropriate. I can assure you, absolutely, there's been no lying, no deliberate or falsification or lying, and that is quite a strong statement.
You already admitted
Mr.
that you have
Vesty.
earlier.
I've not made any lies. I said everything in as factual as I understand it. And I say the intention has absolutely been price parity. You've had some independent confirmation of that from Mr. Thompson. So yes, you don't agree, you don't believe it, you think there is alternative ways, and I say we need to try and find a way to show that this is, to get an independent look at this. But can I just go to officers to talk about the expertise and independent consultants that we have had on this project?
Excuse me. Mandy, did you want to come in first to say a bit about the background of the expertise? What I would just say is that we do have a consultant who's part of our team, who's a leading expert in the field, Simon Woodward. He has been on the team since the beginning of the process, and he continues to support us with his expertise in terms of the system. And he's recognised as a leading expert nationally. And he works for the GLA, so he works for a number of authorities, and he has a lot of credibility. In terms of designing the system, proper accountants were used, proper auditing it takes place at the moment. It was a design and build system, and obviously we'd have financial input from leading companies like KPMG to verify and help with the price model that was brought forward. I think Mandy could provide a bit more detail than that, having been with the scheme from its inception, if she doesn't mind.
Well, can I just jump in there quickly, Catherine, just to touch on that?
Can we let Mrs. Charrington respond first, and then you can scoop that up? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would just endorse really what Catherine has said. We have had expertise. I've had several leading experts within the field throughout the scheme. We have been continuously funded by government funds. They also carry out their own scrutiny of the scheme, everything involved with the scheme. Mr. Woodward, who is an industry expert, he's actually on the GLA framework. They scrutinise the framework and the consultants on it. I think there's no doubt that we've had expertise throughout the scheme in the installation and the design strategy and the pricing and all the things that have been raised this evening. However, I do acknowledge that still customers do not feel comfortable with the pricing, are not happy, and do not feel it equates to a reasonable tariff. So I do think we've got to have a look again at how we are explaining that and the mechanisms we're using, and maybe share more readily how we arrive at the tariffs that we currently use, which we're happy to do. I'm happy to do. So I'm happy to pick this up from this meeting, so we can look at that with our customers, so they have more reassurance that this is how the prices were arrived at.
Thank you. So I'm just going to touch on what both Catherine and Amanda said, because fortunately the pair of them were actually in a meeting with me and Mr. Woodward, and Ollie, who's here, and Grace. And Mr. Woodward actually said, and I quote verbatim now, "We set a price we thought was a fair price. Our pricing is incomparable to the market. We did no bottom-up modelling. There is no way that you can get 6.1 pence per kilowatt hour when the market rate was sub 3 pence, unless you bundle in fixed rate costs into a variable charge." What that does, and I'll break it down just for everyone here, is if you have a static charge of £100 per annum, but you build it into a variable charge, it means that the second you go over a pre-described limit, people end up paying double or triple for it. In your own financial models, you state that the average consumption is 4,400 kilowatt hours per annum, but we all know that we have customers who live on this estate who use 15,000 kilowatt hours. How then can you bundle in a fixed rate into a variable charge and have price parity? I can tell you, you can't. And the reason you can't is because you don't have market inputs in your model. What you have, and once again I quote Mr. Woodward, "We set a price we thought was a fair price." It's not a fair price. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vesti, and I'm aware that you dispute the way and argue about the way the pricing was set, the modelling, and all the other things that factor into this. In the end, it's the price that is paid at the end, and I agree it would be very helpful if we could have some independent verification to address this. I accept that you don't think it's fair personally, and other residents are concerned. But yes, the aim is to have a fair and comparative price, and the work that's been done has demonstrated it is fair and comparative, but that has to be proven to the residents, and that's the issue we are facing. I'm aware that time is getting on. I think we've covered all the questions on the agenda and picked up quite a few additional ones from residents, so thank you all very much for coming along. I think there is a lot of issues that still need to be addressed and dealt with. The only way we're going to get customers to have confidence and faith in SDEN is to see a resolution to the outages. Hopefully the compensation will address some of the concerns people have had, and the response from Stephen Thompson of Barrett's about the commitment to addressing any further outages there. And working with SDEN.
Sorry,
there is some customer services. No, thank you. I think I'm going to bring it to a close now. I'm going to ask. I'm going to
come on, guys. Come on. Let people speak.
Thank you. I'm aware there's lots more questions, and I'm not sure that we can resolve them tonight. And we have
should have had a different chair.
And we could have, we have undertaken to.
Jane, this is a 2-minute question. Can I just ask Stephen Thompson something?
I will, Grace, let you ask Stephen Thompson a quick question, because this is probably an opportunity that you to speak to Stephen that you wouldn't have otherwise. But then we will respond to all the questions in writing. Grace, I will let you ask Mr. Thompson your question.
Just very quickly, Mr. Thompson, you mentioned other sites which you had, you said you knew about other sites with, what do we have? Decentralized energy that had very comparable prices to ours. Can you let me know what those sites are and what their prices they pay? Just so we have it, if you're thinking we're struggling to understand our pricing, then maybe that would help if you could give us some kind of way into who we should look at as a comparator if you're saying we can't look to the generalized market.
Thank you, Grace. That's a very helpful suggestion. Mr. Thompson?
He's no longer on the call. Can I suggest that we take that up with them, because that's quite unacceptable that he's decided just to walk out.
Thank you, Elliot.
We will put that question to him. I think he probably thought the meeting was only for an hour, or it might be that his connection failed, who knows. But we can ask him to do that, because I thought it was quite a helpful suggestion. Thank you.
Is there a possibility of a future meeting like this, Jane?
I'm about to come on to next steps, and yes, I think it would be very useful for us to have more meetings like this, because it's important that you as residents can ask questions directly of officers, and it was very helpful, I think, to have Barrett's here. Hopefully he will come again. Thank you all very much. I understand there is still dissatisfaction, and it won't be put right until we fix these issues. We will try and get the solutions that you want, which is a reliable service, a pricing system that you are confident in, and a reliable and green source of energy going forward. So I'm going to now turn to Helen Bailey to just ask to sum up and next steps that we can take.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody for a lively and interesting meeting. I won't try and sum up all of the conversation and the comments made. That would, I think, be to diminish them. But there are a number of key actions that I think have been referenced in the meeting, which I'll just repeat, just so that we've all got them in our minds. I think, firstly, at the beginning of the meeting, we were hearing from Barrett's and from SDEN about the work we're doing to check out what is the work on site, to make sure that the technical issues which gave rise to recent outages don't recur. And we've also heard the offer from Barratt's of the £54 compensation to eligible residents, which we will be working with Barratt's to process as quickly as possible. We've heard that from Ms. Charrington that we will be connecting to the Viridor heat source in the next few weeks, and that should increase the reliability of the power supply on site, because the current main boiler will become the backup boiler, and I hope that gives people a little assurance. In the meantime, we've had some...
Stephen Thompson joined the meeting.
Oh, great. So Stephen's back with us. It's clearly an interruption. We've had some comments about the customer interface and the way that that works, specifically about the Viridor out of hours number, which we will check out, and a request that if there are any specific issues to make those make us aware of those, to make SDEN aware of those. And with vulnerable customers, for vulnerable customers who think they're vulnerable, to register so that they can be properly looked after, and a point about whether or not customers can be represented in their dealing with SDEN. And you can, but it needs to be very clear that the person who's representing the customer is acting on their behalf for GDPR reasons. We have also undertaken to make very transparent all of the elements around SDEN's pricing policy and the way in which that's calculated, and to publish that. And that will be done as soon as maybe. And additionally, there are a number of questions that have been submitted to this meeting before the meeting, where we will get answers out to people in writing, and we will share the content of those answers as widely as we can. I hope that that covers the issues, Chair, that you've picked up. And I think in that last point about getting out questions and answers, the other questions that have been submitted, we will pick up anything else that I have missed there. I'd like to add my gratitude to yours, to Mr. Thompson from Barratt's and to Mandy Charrington from SDEN for coming along and taking the calls, and my apologies to yours to residents who've suffered the inconvenience and the outages. Is it your connection, or are you muted? You're mute, Jane, this time.
I was on mute. Yes, thank you. Yes, and thank you. I would like to extend my thanks to everyone for agreeing to come along tonight and for participating. We can agree that we need to do a lot more to reassure our customers and build some faith in SDEN customers, in the organisation, the SDEN, and also that we need to have further meetings like this so that we can move forward. And we will get those.
Ask the question to Stephen, Jane.
Mr. Thompson, while I don't know what happened, there was a question from Grace about whether you could supply some of the information you had about comparable pricing with some of the energy networks that you deal with, because you stated you'd looked at them and that they were SDEN compared favourably with them. It would be helpful, I think, as part of the work to try and...
You're mute again, I think, Jane.
I think Councillor McCoy has lost the connection. Mr. Thompson, I think the question was, would you be willing to share the comparison points that you raised earlier on in the meeting in terms of energy costs? Sorry to... I think that happened while you were out of the meeting. Are you back with us? Folks, I think
If they can't do it now, can Ollie ask his final question?
I think
just one last question.
Given that we're suffering a loss of broadband, and Mr. Thompson's had problems and Councillor McCoy's had problems, and we're nearly 8 o'clock, let's take the point away. We've heard the question. And let's wind that into the feedback around price comparisons. Councillor McCoy, are you back with us? Do you want to pick up the chair again and just conclude?
Yes, it seems all my attempts with the hotspots and all sorts, it still doesn't overcome the connections, internet problems, the joy of virtual meetings. I know there's 1 or 2 people still with outstanding questions. If you would like to submit your questions in writing, we'll endeavour to have them taken. I'm sure we could be here all night with lots of questions, but we will have another meeting as well so that we can deal with that. in good time. So again, just thank you to everyone for coming along and participating in the meeting. Thank you for your time and patience. And yes, I extend my apologies as well on behalf of the council that you're not getting the service that we want you to get. It's we're unhappy too, but we can only do everything in our powers to try and put that right going forward. So thank you very much. I'll close the meeting. The live stream will be available later, and we'll get those written responses to you as soon as possible. Thank you all very much. Good evening.